And okay, I think it's there. So Greg has covered general overview of Globus and how to use it, how to share. There will be more sharing and automation, and it all boils down to you know, making your storage visible on Globus. And one way, this is what we'll concentrate in this talk. So we'll go over again concepts and definitions, a little bit about prerequisites, and then I'll try to do a live demo of creating a Globus endpoint and collections, and talk about configurations options, and also from this perspective of user of the system administrator, how to monitor and manage user activity. So if you recall the general structure and setup of Globus, there are two endpoints with collection. Data flows from point A to point B. The data channel is strictly between the endpoints. We don't see your data, and then the user comes in and just uses Globus services as orchestrator. So we are a broker, and the fire and forget nature, when you close the window that you use, you can close the window that you use to talk to the Globus service, but the Globus service runs on your behalf in the background and babysits your transfers. So this diagram is a simple transfer case. It says subscriber, but this does not require any subscription. Just anyone can use Globus in this fashion. And we will concentrate on the Globus Connect, which is a piece of software that presents your storage, makes your storage accessible via Globus. And as Greg mentioned, your storage doesn't have to be a physical on-prem, GPFS or Lustre or what have you. It could be a cloud storage. We abstracted it. It looks the same from the standpoint of the end user. So Globus Connect server, the multi-user version, is a piece of a set of packages, Linux only, installed by and managed by system administrators. End users don't have to deal with it, and there are native packaging for various distributions. You can download it from. You can enable it. All the instructions are how to add this to your system on our website. So from the sysadmin standpoint, and let me go back to Globus Connect server architecture. So you need servers. Like we call them data transfer nodes. This is where typically we suggest using Science DMZ concept, so friction-free connection to inside and outside world, hopefully not impeded by deep packet inspection firewalls and all that. Globus Connect, so data transfer nodes, wrong direction. One or more data transfer nodes constitute an endpoint. An endpoint is just an instant, it's a label. It's a logical concept used to address this particular installation of Globus Connect server. It can be propped by one or more data transfer nodes. So this defines what the actual servers. Then on top of it, you have storage gateways. That's where you define policies and configurations for access and who can access your storage, what can they do there, can they share, can they not share, what areas of the file systems are exposed, and all that. So storage gateways define policies, and on top of the storage gateways, you have collections. Could you start, as Greg mentioned, you start with a mapped collection where there is a direct correspondence of incoming Globus ID to Globus identity to a local user. And then those local users, if you allow them, as an administration, if you allow them, they could create guest collection where they can share data with the outsiders who don't have an account on your local system. So all of everything below this dotted line is generally what system administrators deal with, and this constitute the Globus Connect server. Above, regular users only deal with things above the dotted line with the collections. And so, a summary: endpoint is a logical construct that identifies an instance of Globus Connect to the Globus service. So it's just a label, and you will see lots. Globus is all about UUIDs, so it is a UUID. Data transfer node is a physical manifestation of the endpoint. It's actually a server. It can be a virtual machine. It can be a physical hardware. Doesn't matter. It's still a server that actually does serving of your storage. You can have more data transfer node within an endpoint, and with a larger physical footprint, you get better resilience and performance. A connector, and this is I kind of glossed over it on the first slide. It's a software package that implements an interface that allows the Globus service to talk to specific storage system, type of storage. So POSIX connector comes built in, and it's free, and you don't need a subscription. Premium cloud storage, that's an extra cost. You need a subscription for that. But once that is configured, that cloud storage looks like on Globus looks like any other storage. And it's built in. Part of the reason I glossed over it because it can be ignored, and nobody really interacts with the connector. Storage gateways is specific connector. So storage gateway is storage specific. So there's a POSIX storage gateway for the POSIX connector, or storage gateway for Amazon S3 connector. It is configured to access a storage system with whatever policies you want. You can configure what identity providers, path restrictions, specific users, groups, and all that. And then the collection is a logical construct that allows a user to access data via the Globus service, as Greg demonstrated. A collection is sitting on top of a storage gateway, and storage gateway defines the policies for that specific collection, and projects parts of your storage system hierarchy into the Globus space. So that was the admin. Like the researcher view is just we just do transfer from one collection to another collection, and possibly we share by creating me as the person on the map collection. I have access to my institutional storage. I need to share it with the collaborator, who doesn't have an account on the institutional storage system at my university, but I tell Globus that I, by the power vested in me, am granting that permission to my collaborator. And so when the collaborator comes into my guest collection, they only see what I allowed them to see, and they only see it if I allowed them to see it, and then they transfer it. But on underneath at the local file system level, it will look like it's me accessing it. So all local access is done with the credentials and account of the user who created the guest collection. And you get records in the logs, and if you set up your collection as storage gateway as high assurance, then you get audit logs that not only record which identity or which local user was used to access, but also high assurance audit log also keep track of what outsider identity was used to access it. But as you've seen from the end user standpoint, mapped and guest collections look more or less the same. They all have paths. There is a base path for the collection, both for all types of the collections. There is a base path, and then you can go from there. The difference is where that base path anchored at, and for guest collections, it's anchored at the directory that we chose as a start, and for mapped collection, it's well for guest collection, it's where anchored at where the creator decided, and for base collection, for mapped collection is the base path is anchored at where the admin that created that mapped collection decided to be. Conceptual architecture of the Globus Connect services. So you install the package of Globus Connect server on the data transfer node. It comes with the command line interface that you could configure things with. It starts several services, and one of them, most important, is Globus Connect Manager service that sits and listens to and talks to the Globus services globally. It is accessible by there is a fully qualified domain name, DNS name for it, which can be used, and I'll show you later. And there is a grid FTP server that actually does transfers when requested. When you install a Globus Connect server on the data transfer node, it registers your endpoint is an application in a client for the Globus auth service. It would when you install it, it would require to create a project possibly, and in Globus, and I'll demo it in a second. But once there will be a client ID and secret, and that will be used to identify your installation, your endpoint to the Globus service. Recommended deployment, we highly preach and suggest using Science DMZ concept. So kind of separate the research network from commodity network. That creates the friction-free flow of data. And again, this diagram shows the typical structure. Take a look at the ESNet, Energy Science Network folks page that's linked below. Again, what we want to do is for data to flow from point A to point B as frictionless as possible, and the control channel goes to Globus services. So prerequisites, network accessibility. It needs to be your endpoint, your data transfer node, needs to be on the publicly routable IP. Port 443 for the control channel could be configurable. We recommend sticking with the default if possible. It needs to accept inbound and outbound traffic from everywhere. This can be restricted to just the net block of Globus service itself. So that's a /27, I think. This will severely limit functionality. We highly recommend against it. It can be behind NAT. Again, not the best, but could be. We have a section in the user guide covering that. So that's for the control channel. For the data channel, that can be on a private network because the data will flow directly between point A and B, and it needs these ports. These are the default ports. They're ephemeral. You can they don't stay open, right? The orchestrator says, open, here's the connection for this from this endpoint to this endpoint on this port. Connection happens. Once everything is transferred, the port is closed. This range, 50,000 to 51,000, is configurable. We strongly advised against it because the two installations, the two endpoints, when they start talking and orchestrating transfer, they looked at the ports that are common between them, so they can initiate the transfer. And if you move away from this window, chances are other installations will not be able to talk to your ports at all. So for data channel, we recommend these ports, but make sure that you can confirm your reachability from the outside. The other important prerequisite, network time, need to be synced. So NTP is great. So we will try to do the walkthrough in multiple steps. This is the web page that covers many details about the Globus Connect server. Conceptually, these are the steps. You need to install GCS packages on your data transfer nodes, set up the endpoint, the logical construct, add nodes to that endpoint. Then we will create it. For starter, for the purpose of this this demo, we'll create a POSIX storage gateway. Then you need to create a mapped collection, associate endpoint with a subscription. Once it's subscribed, we can create guest collections and create additional feature like browser upload download. So last three steps require a subscription. Okay, the installation. Let's skip that. You know how to enable external repositories on your systems. And generally, when we run in-person tutorials, we stand up a pool of EC2 instances for everyone to practice. We didn't do it this time because this is a webinar. So I have an instance and I will play on it. It already has Globus Connect server packages installed, but nothing is configured. So we go to step by step endpoint creation and node setup. And it really boils down to a couple simple commands. Globus Connect server, endpoint setup, give some parameters, and then once the endpoint setup, we'll do a node setup. The important parts here are the owner. This is where you put in your identity. The identity needs to be known to Globus. So if you haven't logged in before, you need to log in first, then log into Globus so Globus auth knows you. But other than that, everything is should be pretty straightforward. And once we run the endpoint setup, there is a deployment key.json. This is the crux for your installation. This is literally a key for your installation. So safeguard that key. Once it's there, put it in your config management or safe storage. You will need it for any modification on the endpoint to add any extra additional nodes or change nodes. You will need that key. So let's go to the demo and try to do. Let's SSH to my instance. I haven't done anything to it except adding my laptop's key to it. So it has that. Time correct. Okay. I'm going to use a little cheat sheet for all the command. So Globus Connect server, tutorial endpoint, organization. I go. My email. And the owner identity. It could be changed, by the way. So I will use my LevG at UChicago. The owner can be changed later if necessary. Also, there is a way to specify a parent owner, so the things that will look like the owner but not the owner. But let's not concern ourselves with that. So this is the command. I think we can run it. Yes. This may take a little. Okay, now it wants me to authenticate. Okay. Then okay. Give me the code. Paste the code here. This will take a little bit, so while it needs to it creates a short-term certificate with Let's Encrypt. It will manage register the DNS name that data.globus.org, the unique one for my endpoint. I need to we started mentioning the project. So running endpoint setup registered a Globus auth client, and for most of you, if you haven't done this before, a project may be automatically created. If you have, then you will be asked, if you have created projects or have installations, you may be asked to choose which project this installation will go under. And you can see your projects and Globus auth clients in settings, under developer settings in the web app. Okay, we're getting close.
Hey, Lev, I'm going to break in with a quick question here. There was a question asking about the owner of the endpoint. Does that, can that be an alias to prevent, if people leave the organization? The owner actually has to be, as you said, has to be an identity known to Globus Auth. It's really common for institutions to do that with a service account, though, to be the actual owner of the application. And then I see Robert's. Yeah, and then you can certainly add other other description to that ownership of the endpoint. And you can also change there's only one true owner because there's one true owner of the application in the developer portal, but you can also change the advertised owner, what users see when they actually come and if they explore down to that endpoint.
Right, right. And there are multiple tricks that could be done, but I think the easiest is use any whoever creates it can be an owner, and then add roles to the endpoint later. And the roles are subscription feature, but then this way a team of sysadmins can manage the endpoint while one of them is the owner, or as Greg said, the service account could be the owner. All right, so we are done with endpoint creation. This is, and I think if I go into Globus app, I look for it'll be on the console. Endpoints should see. No, not yet. Okay. But notice the weird data Globus org name. That's a unique name for my endpoint. And once I add nodes, that DNS name will resolve to the IPs of my data transfer nodes. So right now, if I do that, it does not resolve, but if I do, okay, Globus, server node setup, and this needs to be sudo. And there's very few commands with Globus Connect server are done with sudo. Most are done as your regular identity, as regular admin user. But the node setup is the one that requires sudo. Okay, we're getting there. And I need to reload Apache on the node. Now, if I do, oops, no, okay, well, live demos. I should now see my endpoints. All right, we'll skip that. So we ran the endpoint setup, ran the Globus Connect node setup, we started Apache, and now let's look at the endpoint details. So Globus Connect server is an app, and I need to log in to it. Yeah. University of Chicago ID. Okay. Okay, so the endpoint is there, it's configured, has a UUID, it's not subscribed, there is a GCS manager URL, and it belongs to me. So we are in the diagram before, we are right here. We've defined the label, the endpoint, and we've added one data transfer node to it. If we wanted to add another data transfer node, we would need to just copy the deployment key JSON from the original DTN, and I should have shown it. It's just a bunch of secrets in JSON form. This is crucial, so keep that file and safeguard it. And adding another node to a DTN would literally amount to copying that file to the new node and running node setup command again. And the node would talk to the Globus service, see, oh, I'm supposed to, this is the deployment key JSON, it corresponds to this endpoint, I'm going to become a part of this endpoint. And lo and behold, you'll have two DTNs. This is great. You can take nodes in and out of endpoints as needed, so perfect for maintenances, enable, disable, and that's it. Now let's go to the next level, storage gateways. They define a set of access policies. So who can get it? Which identity domains are acceptable, and how the identity is mapped from Globus identity, from that domain to local accounts. Also, the policy scope, which parts of this file system is accessible to Globus, or which local accounts can use can have access to it. Maybe you only want a certain subset of your user to be able to do it. Also, high assurance settings are configured here as well, if you need to. Multi-factor authentication requirement. Again, generally we defer to your whatever identity provider is configured with identity domains if they require MFA, but you can force MFA for high assurance no matter what the other side does. So with map collection, remember for map collection, access requires the user that identity to have an account on the host system. And so we talk about two-part authentication config. The identity domains, who can come in, where they can come in from, and then how do we map them to the local account on the system. User can have multiple identities. We had discussion in the chat about linked identities. On access, if they are primary authenticated with a different identity, but they have a linked one, linked identities will be scanned for a match. If no identity from required domain found, the user will be asked to link one or not link. And identity domains may include a bunch of organizations, the federated Globus federated list that you've seen. It can be your institution's IDP trusted by Globus, or you can stand up a local OpenID Connect server using your PAM stack. So you have lots of options here. And as far as mapping identities to local accounts, the default method that we use is incoming identity, which looks like user X at whatever identity domain. Generally, that's not an email. No, this is not an email. That's an identity. It may look like an email, and the email may be the same as it, but conceptually, this is an identity. So that user, by default, when we are mapping to a local account, we just strip the domain. So user X at UChicago becomes user X locally. And then this works best for campus identity with synchronized and federated local accounts. But you have options. You can specify expressions in a JSON document, or you can call out to a custom script that would do whatever magic you want it to do. And at the end, what matters is the correspondence. A way to tell for this user, for this identity, use this local user. So we will go and create a POSIX storage gateway. So this is the only type permitted without the subscription. It will allow access to user with credentials from your organization. And we can actually set a lot of policy for a simple example here is do just re-authentication timeout, make your users miserable every 90 minutes. So the general command, Globus connect server, storage gateway, create, and then the type and settings. Authenticate identity domains accepted. In this case, I will use Chicago EDU. If you need multiple, you can specify multiple. You just need to give several -- domain flags. And the authentication timeout is there. So let's go to my cheat sheet. POSIX storage gateway domain authentication timeout 90 run. Yes, done. All right, I will need this gateway ID. So next, later, but for now, we are done. We created a storage gateway. So next step, we need to create a mapped collection on top of it. And we will use a default identity mapping. It'll be rooted at the user's home directory. And the access will require authentication with identity from uChicago. Globus connect server collection create, and then settings. Specify the storage gateway ID that we've received in the previous step, and then give the base path, so where the collection will be rooted, and the name. So going back. I need to save this first. Okay, my cheat sheet. Storage gateway ID. Oh. Okay, and the name. Not very original. Done. All right, I think I have it. And now I could try to access it. So I'm going to File Manager, search. All right, I think that's it. Going to it. Requires consent. Okay. Give it my consent with LabVIEW Chicago EDU. Okay, what happened? And you may guess we're using the default mapping of user Globus identity to local user. On the Amazon instance, there is no user levg, right? My uChicago identity levg at uChicago, but there is no levg on the file system. So I need to create a user, which again, you wouldn't need to do it on well, you would already have it on your DTNs, but on mine, the instance does not have my own username. So let's create a fake user. Add user echoes lev lev g. Oh yeah. Okay, created. Go to become levg. Nothing in the directory. Touch a file. Make dir a dir. Okay, I have something. Go back to my admin identity. And now if I go back to the instance, I'll to the end to my collection. Try again. Okay, I'm in. This is a directory. This is a file that I've just created. So this works. We are successfully, we have created a mapped collection. So now when the user tries to access this mapped collection in the web app, they go to Globus servers. They need to authenticate. Globus servers sends them to authenticate with their federated identity provider, gets user information from there. In the user security context, now it connects to the source collection and uses maps that Globus identity to the local username, access files, and then does the same thing on the destination, and then transfers files directly from one collection to another. So we've accessed our collection, created the local user, the map collection work. So now what we can do, common configuration options, we can restrict access, which local users, which local groups. For guest collection, we can restrict sharing. Well, we can enable or disable sharing at all. Then we can say which paths are accessed, which paths are not allowed to be shared, which local users are trusted to share and which are not. Same with group. And we can also enable HTTPS access, force data channel encryption. By default, it's not for the sake of performance, but nowadays with multi-core CPUs, I think you can just default enable and be done. So again, local account restrictions, you can use --u for every command. This is on the storage gateway level, and you can use --user allow, --user deny. For POSIX groups, you can on POSIX connectors, POSIX storage gateways, and you can do POSIX by limiting by group. So of all the mapped identities that may access your map collection, you can narrow that universe with additional options. Path restrictions. The general recommendation. So storage gateway base specifies where collections may be created, and then the collection base path specifies the base directory for the collection. And in terms of best practices, if we're talking about HPC system where your users are familiar with /home, /scratch, /project, it makes sense to have the base at root, and then from there people can go to the specific subdirectories. And you don't want to expose everything in your root to Globus. So that's where you can use restrict path on the storage gateway to specify narrow read write or non-access. So we'll get to that in a second. So for example, right now on this collection, I can go, I'm in my home directory, but I can go one up and I can see as user left G, and now I can see bin everything in root, which probably not ideal. Note, I will not be able to see things that I'm not allowed to see. So if I'm, for example, I cannot go in, if user left G on the file system cannot go into /root. From the same left G at UChicago identity on Globus will not be able to go to /root on Globus. So we respect local permissions, file system permissions, and whatever your local user cannot do on the file system natively, they will not be able to do on the file system with Globus. But I can see that there are things in root which maybe we don't want to expose. So we can use restrict path functionality to narrow what the user can even see. So for the sake of this demonstration, we create a new storage gateway with limited access to just home and nothing more. And the path restrictions are specified in where path JSON file. And I just create a gateway with that restriction, and then on top of that storage gateway, I will create a new mapped collection. So conceptually, very similar to what we've done before. You can create multiple storage gateway within the same endpoint, and on each storage gateway you can create separate collections. So let's go to our terminal. So the important part when you specify has to be fully qualified path, not relative path or anything. And there are other options of specifying restrict path.
Lev, sorry, before you move ahead with this one, it's just a good time to jump in with one of the questions that was asked about, someone deploying data on the RCC storage and making it available to users and different departments. It's important to be aware that you don't need separate endpoints, storage gateways, collections for every single department or every single storage system. There's different ways at levels at which you can aggregate these things. So you could, in a very simple scenario, have a single endpoint with different storage gateways for different storage system types. So POSIX, some cloud, some archival system, what have you, Google Drive, etc. And then on top of those, you could have collections on top of each of those storage systems. But all of those can sit on a single endpoint.
Right. Thank you, Laz. Yep.
One other thing I wanted to ask, I think Vas and I had sent at the same time in the chat there. If there are separate endpoints, and sometimes each department wants to run an endpoint for their own storage reasons, it's covered under one subscription. So most of our subscriptions allow for an unlimited number of endpoints. So it's not like you'd have to pay twice for a subscription to manage multiple or subscribe multiple endpoints.
Right. And the subscriber is an institution. So once the institution purchased a subscription, anything within the institution can use it. So let's look at the path restriction. JSON, very simple. You can specify which parts of the file system users can read or read-write, and which parts they don't have access to. And then all we do is storage gateway, create POSIX, and I'll do it restricted. Same settings, and I will need to add strict path file. One paths JSON. I think that should be it. We've created a new storage gateway. Now let's make collection. We will create a collection on that storage gateway, restricted one. Map collection restricted. Okay, it is created. Now if I go to my collections, and now I want to go to the restricted one. It will ask me to consent, present the identity from U Chicago. Yes. Okay, I am in my home directory. Going up, I can see that there are things in /home. I will not be able to go to somebody else's home, obviously. But now if I try to go up, I do not notice. I'm in root. I only see /home because I have breadcrumbs to /home/lefg, but I do not see any of the other things on the file system. So that's what restrict path that it gives us. All right, we're getting close to the end of the presentation. So subscription is configured for your institution. There may be multiple subscription managers per subscription. Subscription managers can associate an endpoint with a subscription, which will result in a subscribed endpoint, which in the past, we called them managed endpoints. Now they're called subscribed. And also there could be additional roles for, with the subscription, multiple identities can be assigned roles on the endpoint for endpoint managers. So teams of sysadmins can have individually have roles as administrator of the endpoint or manager of the endpoint, activity manager on the endpoint, or activity monitor on the endpoint. So for example, sysadmins can be can all be granted administrator role, while help desk people or lower tier of administrator can have just activity monitor. So you have a lot of control there. So how to make the endpoint subscribe? As a member of institution subscription, like Greg showed, you can subscribe your own endpoint. So the ones where the owner are you, if you are a member of subscription, you've been added to that subscription group, boom, you can associate your own endpoints with subscription. Subscription managers can subscribe any other endpoints. And more details on subscriptions are at the link below. You can see which institutional subscriptions you are part of in settings. You can search for other institutional subscriptions and apply to join them, and so on. So to associate the endpoint with subscription, your identity needs to be part, and then you just run the Globus Connect server endpoint set subscription ID command. So let's just do that. And the command, generally you give it a subscription ID, but there is a simple shortcut. If you're only a member of one subscription, you can just use default, and that single identity will subscription ID will be used. I don't think this will work for me. Server set endpoint set subscription ID default. Nope, doesn't work. I'm a member of multiple subscriptions. So let's look, which ones do I have? In settings, subscriptions, I will use Globus tutorial one. And I need the subscription UUID, which I can copy from here. Cool. Done. Okay, and point show. And notice now it is, in the past it was not subscribed, now it shows subscription ID. And now I could use all the benefits of the subscription, all the premium features that come with the subscription. For example, sharing. So back to the benefits. You need to remember that there are identities, there are roles and permissions, and by default, only the endpoint owner can configure an endpoint, but you can delegate the administrator role to other admins. And best practice is not to do it individually, but use Globus groups. So you can create a Globus group with the admins and populate it as new team members come in, and depopulate it if they leave. Very easy, one place, and you can grant the role to this group on multiple endpoints and so on. When using Globus Connect server CLI, check which identity is logged in with Globus Connect server session show command. It should show all of your identities that have authenticated to this instance. The permissions on the storage gateways, by default, if you do storage gateway show, by default, not everything is displayed. Same for the collections, but there is a flag to include private policies that you could use and to inspect everything. And great documentation on our page. And now, as for the guest collections, you as administrator don't make them, right? Unless you need to, but you have the power to enable. And by default, they're not enabled. But if you're okay with that, which I think for many cases you would be okay with that, then you just update your collection with -- allow guest collections flag, and once there, your users will be able to create guest collection, and then you can trim it down if you want some limits with allow users, deny users. who can do things. And remember the paranoia of system administrator, right? Oh, the outsider can come into my system from the web and wander around. Yes, but they the guest users will have no more than the access permissions as the original local user who created the guest collection. And in general, they so they're not only they're confined by the settings of the mapped collection, they're further constricted and confined to the base path of that guest collection that the sharer created. And guest collection root is always relative to the mapped collection base path, no escaping above. I think it's root, basically. And on top of it, you can do restrictions of which per user, per group, and per path. Very similar. For example, you can allow local users to maybe, I don't know, you have /home/scratch/project. These are okay to be shared because this is where people work. But then you may have a collection of /data sets that you want to be present to local users if they need them, but you don't them to kind of share those data sets, read-only data sets out, for leechers outside of your organization. So you can limit sharing restrict path to exclude those data sets. Subdirectories, very similar in JSON path restrictions document, just like we did with regular collections. And you can, if you really want complicated settings, there is the concept of sharing policy, where you can define specific policies for user path combination, not just blanket thing type, but very very specific. We're not going to go into details today. So I'm not going to. This is for the tutorial. I don't think I want to spend time on this. Greg already demoed, but basically, just do enable sharing and dash enable sharing, and you're done. Similar to enable web browser upload downloads, by default it's off. You need to enable it on your collection. And dash enable HTTPS, and that's a flag, and that's it. I want to talk a little bit about Management Console, which is another part of the benefit that comes with the subscription. You can monitor, as the admins, you can monitor current transfers on your endpoints at the specific transfer level. You can pause. The very powerful thing, you can pause and resume any transfer in progress that would send a notice to the transfer owner. And also you can set up pause rules. So if you're planning a maintenance from starting tomorrow, you can set up a pause rule that, as of tomorrow, things will not go. So, and then once you come out of the maintenance, you remove that pause rule and everything flows.